Hello and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music, your one and only destination for 80s pop music end to end. I'm the 80s mixtaper, your navigator of sorts on this musical journey. Today we get into playlist 23, still April 1981, but before we do, let's do a recap for new listeners. In 2016, more on a whim than anything, I decided to try and listen to every single UK charting entry of the 80s from the 31st of December 1979 to the 31st of December 1989. A spot of COVID, some Spandau Ballet, Kylie and Jason, and a little Go West thrown in, and I'd done it by about 2021. This podcast is the retelling of that journey, one song at a time. All the information on the bands, the breakups, the makeups, the amusing anecdotes in between. Think of me as an audio version of the classic 80s teen magazine Look In. What we do on this pod is inch the date forward little by little and look at the best, brightest and most bonkers chart entries. We create playlists for both Spotify and Apple Music, which you will find in the episode description, and each week we take 7 or the last 6 of the songs in that particular playlist and explore their journey. Unfortunately, we cannot play the songs on the pod due to copyright rules, and hence the needs for playlists, but you can easily flip between the pod and the music on your phone on a walk. That's what I tend to do. And to that end, what do we have on this week's show in the first half of Playlist 23? Well, we'll introduce another one of the Liverpool new wave bands to the mix, Echo and the Bunnymen. We also meet the absolutely bonkers Tenpole Tudor. We get some action from 80s stalwarts The Clash and Madness. We throw in some rockabilly courtesy of the Stray Cats, do some fan service for the Deadpool fans with Juice Newton, and end with some Undertones. So without further ado, let's get back to the music. Okay, let's spool the tape back to April 1981 and a Liverpool that's still recovering from the scorched earth fallout of punk's collapse, all while new wave and post-punk circles rebuild the landscape in their own fractal art school DIY ways. You've already crossed paths with The Teardrop Explodes, that Julian Cope-fronted rocket ship out of Liverpool's psych punk Bohemia. But their nearest rivals and sometimes allies, Echo and the Bunnymen, were right there in the same petri dish of weirdness and ambition. This is Crocodiles, track 1, playlist 23, press play now. Echo and the Bunnymen formed in 1978 in Liverpool, a city still reeling from its industrial decline, but buzzing with creative defiance. The original lineup was Ian McCulloch on vocals and rhythm guitar, Will Sargent on lead guitar, Les Pattinson on bass, and get this, a drum machine called Echo. And then they added the Bunnymen as a surreal, almost throwaway tag to go with it. Ian McCulloch has said in interviews that there wasn't any deep or symbolic meaning behind the Bunnymen. They thought it sounded quirky and memorable, and it stuck. No human drummer yet, just a cold mechanical pulse. McCulloch, a wiry, sharp-tongued frontman with a mop of hair that could block out the sun, had briefly messed around in a proto-band called the Crucial Three with Julian Cope, of the Teardrop Explodes fame, and Pete Wiley, later of Wah. The trio fizzled, but it planted seeds for Liverpool's post-punk explosion. By May 1979, the Bunnymen dropped their debut single, The Pictures on My Wall, on Zoo Records, a local indie label run by Bill Drummond. It was raw, moody, and hinted at the brooding charisma McCulloch was about to unleash. By 1980, they ditched the drum machine for Pete De Freitas, a Trinidad-born drummer with a posh upbringing that clashed with the band's working-class Liverpool roots. De Freitas met them at a gig at Eric's, the legendary Liverpool club, and joined them just in time to cut their debut album Crocodiles, released on July the 18th, 1980, on Corova Records. Recorded at Eden Studios in London and Rockfield Studios in Wales, the album was produced by Drummond and David Bouth, credited as the Chameleons, with Ian Brodie handling the single Rescue. Crocodiles hit number 17 on the UK albums chart, a solid showing for a band still finding its feet. The album's vibe, dark, jagged, with Will Sargent's guitar lines slicing through McCulloch's apocalyptic croon, felt like a dispatch from a gothic woodland, as music journalist Chris Salovitz put it. Now on to Crocodiles, the single. The song got a second life on the Shine So Hard EP, recorded live at the Pavilion Gardens in Buxton, Derbyshire on January the 17th, 1981. This EP, which also included Zimbo, All That Jazz and Over the Wall, marked the band's first UK chart single, peaking at number 37. The Buxton gig was a spectacle. The band, swathed in dry ice, played a set heavy on Crocodiles tracks. The EP's raw energy captured the Bunnymen at their most feral, with De Freitas's hypnotic drumming and Sargent's mantra-like guitar riffs driving the sound. Lyrically, Crocodiles is McCulloch at his cryptic best. I read it in a magazine. I don't want to see it again. I threw away the magazine and look for someone to explain. I don't want to look back. I can't look around. I don't want to see it coming round. It feels like a mantra for dodging ghosts of the past or future. Later, I can see you've got the blues in your alligator shoes. Me, I'm all smiles. I got my crocodiles. It lands like a smirk in the face of despair. McCulloch strutting through the chaos. The song's structure, taut, repetitive with Sargent's spiky riffs and De Freitas's relentless beat, make it feel like a car chase through a fog bank. Liverpool's new wave scene in the late 70s and early 80s was a pressure cooker, and the Bunnymen were its dark princes. We've already met the Teardrop Explodes, Julian Cope's outfit, who were all about psychedelic sprawl and chemical excess, and we'll be meeting them again later next week. The Bunnymen, though, were tighter, more disciplined, leaning into a stark, angular sound that owed as much to the Velvet Underground as to punk's raw edge. Eric's club was the crucible. Bands like the Teardrop Explodes, Wah, and the Bunnymen shared stages, swapped influences, and fed off the city's gritty defiance. Where Cope's crew leaned into trippy exuberance, the Bunnymen were moodier, their music a black and white photograph compared to the Teardrop Explodes' Technicolor splash. The rivalry wasn't overt, but you could feel the tension, each band carving out its own corner of Liverpool's post-punk soul. David Frick, writing for Rolling Stone in 1981, nailed the Bunnymen's vibe. McCulloch's vocals, he said, were a sort of apocalyptic brooding, blending Jim Morrison's wail with Bowie's theatricality and punk's snarl. Sargent's guitar work, meanwhile, was a primal night of blinking hallucinations. The Crocodiles album and its title track distilled this into something raw yet polished, a sound that felt both timeless and urgently of its moment. The Shine So Hard EP, with its live cut of Crocodiles, turned that energy up to 11, capturing a band on the cusp of something bigger. What hits me about Crocodiles is its refusal to resolve. It's not trying to comfort you or sell you on some grand epiphany. It's a band, young, hungry, a little unhinged, channeling Liverpool's restless spirit into something that cuts like a switchblade. The Bunnymen weren't chasing pop stardom yet. They were too busy conjuring their own mythology. And by 1981, with the Shine So Hard EP, they gave us a glimpse of that mythology in full, jagged glory. Alright, gather round because we've got a proper punk fairy tale on our hands for track 2. 1981, while punk's raw edges are still fraying, a band called Tenpole Tudor dropped a single that sounds like a medieval battle cry filtered through a pub brawl. Swords of 1,000 Men is a 3-minute blast of absurd, fist-pumping energy. It explodes onto the UK airwaves with a kind of ragged medieval glee. You know the one. Hoorah, 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 yeah. Over the hill with the swords of 1,000 men. That chorus, charging out like a cavalry of pint-swinging punks, seemed destined to rouse an entire nation from its early 80s slump. But before we charge headlong into battle with Tenpole Tudor, let's back up and look at how they even got here. Press play now. First, the band. Tenpole Tudor was fronted by Edward Tudor Pole, a guy whose name sounds like he should be jousting, not fronting a punk band. Born in London in 1955, Ed was a bit of a misfit, dabbling in acting and music from a young age. By the 1970s, he was already a cult figure, thanks to his role in the Sex Pistols film The Great Rock and Roll Swindle. He appeared on 3 soundtrack singles, including Who Killed Bambi, a sneering theatrical cut that showed off his knack for blending punk snarl with the vaudevillian wink. Ed was a born performer, all gangly limbs and wild eyes, like a scarecrow possessed by Iggy Pop. In 1977, he formed Tenpole Tudor, pulling together a crew of mates, guitarist Bob Kingston, bassist Dick Crippen, drummer Gary Long, and later the wonderfully named Munch Universe. They were a scrappy outfit, gigging around London, leaning into punk's DIY ethos, but with a twist. Ed loved history, old English vibes, and a bit of camp. Think less anarchy in the UK and more anarchy in ye olde England. By 1980, Tenpole Tudor landed with Stiff Records, the label that birthed Elvis Costello and Madness. They dropped 3 bells in a row, a quirky single that hinted at their oddball charm. But it was 1981 when they hit their stride with their debut album, Eddie, Old Bob, Dick and Gary, a title that sounds like a roll call at a village pub quiz. The album was a mix of punk grit and theatrical flair, produced by Bob Andrews and Alan Winstanley, who knew how to polish raw energy without killing its soul. That same year, they released Swords of a Thousand Men as a single, and it's the song that defines them. It's a battle anthem for people who've never held a sword but definitely held a pint. Written by Ed Tudor Pole, it's got this relentless galloping rhythm, like knights charging into the fray, but with a punk edge that makes it feel like those knights are half drunk and laughing. The lyrics paint a vivid scene, deep in the castle and back from the wars, back with my baby and the fire burned tall. Hurrah went the men down below, all outside was the rain and the snow. It's cinematic, almost cartoonish, with Ed's voice half shout, half chant, leading the charge. The chorus hits like a war cry. Hurrah, 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 yeah. Over the hill with the swords of 1,000 men. It's not subtle, but it's not trying to be. The song's about momentum, about rallying the troops or the barflies for one last stand. Later verses ramp up the chaos. We had to meet the enemy a mile away. Thunder in the air and the skies turned grey. Assembling the knights and their swords were sharp. There was hope in our English hearts. It's like a punk rock Henry V with ale instead of armour. The song's production is crisp but raw thanks to Andrews and Winstanley. The guitars chug, the drums pound, and Ed's vocals are front and centre, all manic energy. It's got this charming alchemy, punk's aggression, pub rock's camaraderie, and a nod to historical pageantry. I love this track, and it connected as well. Swords of a Thousand Men entered the UK singles chart in April 1981, peaking at number 6 and hanging around for 10 weeks. By June, it earned a silver certification from BPI for over 250,000 sales. In a year when Adam and the Ants were storming the charts with their own theatrical punk, Tenpole Tudor carved out their own niche, all chainmail and bravado. The band leaned into the medieval shtick hard. Live shows were a spectacle. Ed often performed in a full suit of armour, clanking around like a punk knight. The music video, shot with the band in front of castle ruins, doubled down on the imagery, with Ed leading his ragtag army like a budget Robin Hood. It got regular airplay in Canada, where Stiff released a compilation album titled Swords of a Thousand Men. The song's legacy stretched further. British folk metal band Skyclad covered it in 2001, and the lyric, Over the Hill with the Swords of a Thousand Men, inspired an Ezekiel's The Boys comic arc and an episode of the Amazon series. That's staying power for a song about drunken knights. Swords remains their monument, a wild, ridiculous, glorious anthem that captures a moment where punk could be anything, even a medieval pub crawl. Why does it still hit? It's the sheer audacity. Swords of a Thousand Men doesn't pretend to be profound, it's just fun, loud and beery. It's the sound of a band leaning into their weirdness, and in 1981 that was enough to storm the charts. You can almost hear Ed grinning through the speakers, shouting hurrah, like he's leading a charge to the bar. And maybe that's the point. Sometimes music's job is to make you feel like you could take on 1,000 men, or at least the next round of warm ale and a cheese ploughman's. Track 3, and lo and behold we have a slice of rockabilly, the genre I said I wouldn't play a lot of. So, if you're into the scene, hold this one close to your heart. In the neon haze of 1981 London, where punk's snarl still echoed and new wave synths were creeping in, 3 Long Island misfits, calling themselves the Stray Cats, slipped into the scene like a pack of alley cats with something to prove. Their single Stray Cat Strut, a slinking bass-thumping ode to untouchable cool, was a dispatch from a bygone era, dusted off, and electrified for a world that didn't know it needed rockabilly until Brian Setzer's Gretsch guitar started purring. Picture them, pompadours piled high, tattoos peeking from rolled up sleeves, playing with the kind of swagger that could make a dive bar feel like a cathedral. This is the story of Stray Cats, Setzer, Lee Rocker and Slim Jim Phantom, how they conquered the UK, sparked a rockabilly revival and made Stray Cat Strut a timeless strut of defiance. The Stray Cats formed in 1979 in Massapequa, New York, a Long Island suburb where the air probably smelt like pizza and regret. Brian Setzer, a guitarist with a Gretsch obsession and a voice that could croon or growl, teamed up with school pals Lee Rocker on stand-up bass and Slim Jim Phantom on drums. They were kids. Setzer was barely 20, obsessed with Eddie Cochran, Carl Perkins and Gene Vincent, digging through their parents' vinyl while the CBGB crowd was screaming for the Ramones. They started as the Tomcats, playing rockabilly covers in dive bars, switching names to dodge club owners who wouldn't book the same act twice. By 1980, they had whispers of a Teddy Boy revival in the UK, a subculture worshipping 1950s rockabilly with quiffs and draped jackets. So, they hopped on a plane to London, broke as hell, chasing a scene that didn't exist back home. In London, they hit the ground running. Word spread fast. Members of the Rolling Stones, The Who and Led Zeppelin showed up to their gigs. After one sweat-soaked show, producer Dave Edmunds, a roots rock guru from his Rockpile days, offered to helm their debut. That album, Stray Cats, dropped in February 1981 on Arista Records in the UK, peaking at number 6 on the UK Albums Chart. It was a lean, mean record blending originals with covers like Warren Smith's Ubangi Stomp. 3 singles tore up the UK charts: Runaway Boys that hit number 9, Rock This Town which also hit number 9, and our star today, Stray Cat Strut, which hit number 11. The band's look, pompadours, tattoos, tight black jeans mixed with brothel creepers, was as vital as their sound. They were punk kids playing rockabilly, but with a swagger that made it feel dangerous again. Stray Cat Strut, released April the 17th, 1981 in the UK, is the band's signature. Written by Setzer at 18 in his Long Island garage, it's a slow burn anthem about being young, broke and untouchable. The lyrics paint a vivid picture. Black and orange stray cat sitting on a fence. Ain't got enough dough to pay the rent. I'm flat broke but I don't care. I strut right by with my tail in the air. It's a middle finger to the world, delivered with a smirk. Setzer's guitar solo ranked number 92 on Guitar World's Top 100 Solos in 1998. Slinks like Django Reinhardt with a switchblade. All jazzy bends and greasy twang. Rocker's upright bass thumps like a heartbeat, and Phantom's minimalist drum kit, snare, tom and cymbal keep it loose but effortlessly cool. The bridge is pure attitude. I don't bother chasing mice around. I slink down the alley looking for a fight, howling to the moonlight on a hot summer night. It's the sound of 3 guys who know they're cooler than you'll ever be. The song's UK chart run was solid. Number 11, but its US story is wilder. Released as an import in 1981, it hit number 78 on the US Disco Top 80 chart. When EMI America dropped it stateside in June 1982, alongside the Built for Speed compilation, it initially bubbled under the Billboard Hot 100 at 109, but after Rock This Town cracked the top 10, the label re-released Stray Cat Strut and it roared to number 3 in March 1983, fueled by MTV's love for their retro visuals in a new wave world. Now let's talk rockabilly revival. In the UK, the late 70s Teddy Boy scene was already simmering, with kids in draped jackets worshipping Elvis and Vincent. The Stray Cats landed in a ready-made audience, alongside bands like the Cramps and the Polecats. Their success abroad forced the US to pay attention, but back home rockabilly was a tougher sell. Disco and new wave ruled. A 50s throwback band was a hard pitch in New York clubs. Built for Speed changed that, hitting big in 1982, but the revival stayed niche compared to the UK's fervour. Bands like the Blasters kept the flame alive, but the US leaned harder into synth-pop and hair metal. The Cats' success was an anomaly, a brief moment where retro cool punched through. The Stray Cats didn't just revive rockabilly, they made it feel alive, not a museum piece. Stray Cat Strut is their mission statement, sleek, defiant, and dripping with style. By 1984, they'd split, burned out from touring and internal gripes, but their legacy was set. Setzer later sparked the 90s swing revival, rocker jam with legends like Keith Richards, and Phantom kept the beat in side projects. They've reunited sporadically, proving the Strut never dies. For track 4, we're with a band for the 5th time on this pod, about a song called The Magnificent Seven, and I'm gutted as I couldn't think of anything with a 6 in for the full house. I digress. New York 1980. In the gritty pulse of Electric Lady Studios, where the air hums with cigarette smoke and the ghosts of Jimi Hendrix's riffs, the Clash are cooking up something audacious. It's April, and their triple LP Sandinista is taking shape, a sprawling canvas of punk reggae dub, and now the raw rhythmic heartbeat of New York's hip-hop scene. The Magnificent Seven, released April the 10th, 1981 as the album's 3rd single, is a 5.5-minute proto-rock hip-hop joint from a band drunk on the city's chaos, channeling the fury of the working stiff and the swagger of Block Party's MCs. We last caught these London punks crooning the Motown-laced Hitsville, UK. Now Joe Strummer, Mick Jones and the crew are trading pop hooks for a bass line that slinks like a subway train and lyrics that jab like a tabloid headline. Press play now. So, as we've seen by now, by the time of their triple album Sandinista, the Clash are at the buffet table having a plate of all kinds of stuff. Punk's still their backbone, but these guys are musical magpies, snatching up reggae, dub, and now the raw rhythmic pulse of hip-hop. Mick Jones, in particular, is obsessed, lugging around a boombox blasting Grandmaster Flash and the Sugar Hill Gang, earning him the nickname Whack Attack from his bandmates. This isn't some calculated pivot, it's the Clash doing what they do best, diving headfirst into whatever's vibrating around them. And in New York, that's block parties, breakdancing, and MCs spitting rhymes over funky beats. The song itself, built from the ground up around a bass line so infectious, it should come with a warning label courtesy of Norman Watt-Roy from Ian Dury and the Blockheads. Paul Simonon's off filming Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains with former Sex Pistol members and Ray Winston, so Watt-Roy steps in, laying down a groove that's pure funk, loose and elastic. Joe Strummer, never one to overthink, writes the lyrics on the spot, stream of consciousness style, a technique he also used for Sandinista's other rap-leaning track, Lightning Strikes, Not Once But Twice. The result is a lyrical collage that's half diatribe against the soul-crushing monotony of work, half absurdist romp through pop culture and history. Let's get to those lyrics. The song kicks off with a wake-up call. Ring ring, it's 7 a.m, move yourself to go again. Cold water in the face brings you back to this awful place. It's the sound of the working stiff's alarm clock, the daily ritual of dragging yourself to a job that grinds you down. Strummer's voice, rhythmic, urgent, paints a picture of a supermarket employee trapped in capitalism's churn. Knuckle merchants and new bankers too must get up and learn those rules. Later, it gets weirder, name-dropping historical heavyweights with a smirk. Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi went to the park to check on the game, but they was murdered by the other team, who went on to win 15-0. It's dark, this image of civil rights icons cut down mid-picnic, paired with a tabloid headline like Newsflash vacuum cleaner suck budgie, ooh boy, bye-bye. Strummer's tossing out snapshots of a world where the profound and the ridiculous collide. Chart-wise, the Magnificent Seven hit number 34 on the UK singles chart. Not exactly a blockbuster, but that's not the point. In the US it didn't chart at all, but it became a cult hit on underground and college radio, especially in New York, where black radio station WBLS spun it into heavy rotation. The song's instrumental remix, The Magnificent Dance, dropped April 12, 1981, credited to Pepe Unidos, a pseudonym for Strummer Simonon and manager Bernie Rhodes, and it leaned even harder into the club vibe, with edited cuts in the UK and an extended The Cool Out B-side in the US. WBLS even cooked up their own Dirty Harry remix, sampling Clint Eastwood dialogue, which you can find on bootlegs like Clash on Broadway Disc 4, The Outtakes. What makes this track so vital is how it captures the Clash at their most fearless. Punk was supposed to be raw and rebellious, but by 1981 it was already at risk of becoming a caricature, and you only have to listen to the Tenpole Tudor track 2 songs ago to realise that. The Clash sidestepped that trap not by abandoning their punk edge, but by channeling it into something new. The Magnificent Seven isn't just a punk band trying rap, it's a punk band nailing rap, with a bass line that staples the track together, and lyrics that jab at consumerism, labour and fame with equal parts wit and venom. Consequence of Sound called it the forced foray by a rock band into rap, and even Public Enemy's Chuck D admitted it caught his ear, making him rethink the Clash's weirdo white boy punk cred. Live, this song was a beast. Debuted on the Impossible Mission tour in April 1981, it stayed in their set list until the band's end, with Strummer improvising lyrics like he was channeling a stand-up comedian crossed with a street preacher. A 2020 video by Don Letts mixing footage from their 1981 Tomorrow Show appearance and their Bonds International Casino residency in New York captures that chaotic energy. Strummer snarling, Jones strutting, the crowd losing it. Covers and remixes kept the song alive. THC in 99, the Max Weinberg 7 on Conan, and Too Many DJs mashing it with Basement Jaxx's Romeo for the Magnificent Romeo. The title, some tie it to the 1960 Western, others to the 7-hour workday grind minus lunch. I lean towards the latter. Strummer's too sly to just nod at a cowboy flick when he's singing about working for a rise, better my station. Either way, it's the Clash doing what they do best, being restless, curious, and unafraid to swing big. They didn't just dip their toes into hip-hop, they dove in, and the ripples are still being felt. In the spring of 1981, London's greyness seemed to seep into the bones of Madness, the ska revivalist septet known for their jaunty anthems and pork pie hats, a band for whom this is our 7th visit already. Their latest single, Grey Day, released on April the 17th on Stiff Record, wasn't the suave ditty of their prior hit, The Return of the Lost Palmers 7. Instead, it was a sombre note from a band staring down the dreariness of Thatcher's Britain. On a damp Camden street, where the city's pulse thrummed with discontent, Madness crafted a song that felt like a long exhale after a bruising day. This was no mere pop tune, it was a mirror held up to a nation's malaise, and the reflection wasn't pretty. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of one of my favourite Madness songs. This is Grey Day, track 5, playlist 23. Grey Day, penned by keyboardist Mike Barson, was the lead single from Madness's third album, 7. It climbed to number 4 on the UK singles chart, lingering for 10 weeks, a testament to its grip on a public accustomed to the band's lighter fare. It even nudged the Australian charts at number 82, a faint echo across the globe. Unlike the cheeky scar of Baggy Trousers or the frenetic One Step Beyond, this track was a slow, brooding march, its mood as heavy as the clouds over the Thames. The lyrics cut deep from the start. When I get home it's late at night, I'm black and bloody from my life. I haven't time to clean my hands, cuts will only sting me through my dreams. Delivered by Suggs in a voice drained of his usual impish charm, these lines paint a man battered by existence, haunted even in sleep. The chorus doesn't lift the fog. In the morning I awake, my arms, my legs, my body aches. The sky outside is wet and grey, so begins another weary day. It's stark, almost cinematic in its despair, a portrait of a soul teetering on the brink, a song which may be more prescient than we'd like to admit. The song's roots stretch back to 1978, when Madness, then the North London Invaders, were scrappy kids playing dives like Acklam Hall. Guitarist Chris Foreman described it as a loose psychedelic sketch, more mood than structure, with grim lyrics floating over a hazy jam. By 81, with producers Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley at the helm, it had sharpened into a taut, funereal dirge. Barson's piano sets the pace, plodding, relentless, while the saxophone, usually Madness's spark of joy, waits until the fade-out like a guest too weary to show up early. This was Madness proving they could do more than Scar's high-stepping dance. They were two-tone jesters for sure, but Grey Day showed that they could wield a darker palette, a palette cut with realism. Suggs, reflecting in a 2008 Uncut interview, recalled trying to get Joe Strummer to spin it at a club, hoping the Clash's frontman would catch its weight. Strummer passed, tough crowd, but the song's rawness, its refusal to dress up the pain, made it a standout in a year when the special's Ghost Town was also channeling Britain's unease. That's a song a few episodes ahead. The video, filmed in March 81, leaned into the gloom. Picture Madness on an open-top bus, rolling through London's drizzle, faces as dour as the weather. Another scene has them posed like mannequins in a Camden shop window, a surreal nod to the song's claustrophobic vibe. It's less a music video than a short film about alienation, perfectly matched to the track's pulse. Grey Day works because it doesn't overplay its hand. The B-side Memories keeps things understated, a quiet reflection that doesn't compete with the A-side's heft. Together, they mark a moment when Madness stepped out of their Scar Kid shoes and into something rawer, riskier. It's not their loudest hit, but it's one that lingers, like a chill of a London morning you can't quite shake. Next for track 6, we have one for all you film buffs out there, especially in recent memory, those fans of the comic anti-hero Deadpool. In the soft haze of 1981, Juice Newton stepped into a Nashville studio and breathed new life into Angel of the Morning, a song that had been wandering the airwaves since the Summer of Love, now reborn as a country pop anthem tinged with longing and quiet rebellion. It's a track that feels like a late-night confession, whispered in the glow of a neon-lit bar, where the jukebox hums with stories of hearts that dare to love without a safety net. Written by Chip Taylor, a songwriter with a knack for raw emotion and a family tree tangled with Hollywood drama, this is the song that vaulted Juice Newton from coffee house strummer to chart-topping star. Before we unpack its bittersweet magic, let's trace the path of Judy K. Newton, the Virginia Beach dreamer who became Juice, and how she carried this song to the edge of eternity. Press play now. Judy K. Juice Newton was born on February 18th, 1952 in Lakehurst, New Jersey. But it was the salty air of Virginia Beach, Virginia that shaped her. As a teenager, she was already weaving folk, rock, blues and country into a sound that felt like a coastal sunset, warm, wistful and a little wild. After high school, she played coffee houses, guitar in hand, eventually linking up with guitarist Otha Young to form Dixie Peach, a band that hinted at a genre-blending future. By 1975, they'd become Juice Newton and Silver Spur, signing with RCA Records. Their self-titled debut album that year produced one minor hit, Love Is a Word, but their 1977 follow-up, After the Dust Settles, sank without a trace, and RCA cut them loose. Juice didn't flinch. She signed with Capitol Records in 1978, dropped the Silver Spur name, but the band stayed, and released Come To Me, which barely rippled. Her 1980 album, Take Heart, showed promise, with 5 charting singles like Sunshine and a cover of Any Way You Want Me, both nudging the country's top 40. But 1981 was her year. The album Juice, her third solo effort, arrived with Angel of the Morning as its lead single, a song that would rewrite her story. Chip Taylor wrote Angel of the Morning in 1967, inspired by the Rolling Stones' Ruby Tuesday, capturing a woman's fleeting, unapologetic affair. Juice's version, released in January 1981, wasn't the first. Evie Sands tried in 67, Merrily Rush hit number 7 in 68, and others like Olivia Newton-John took swings, but Juice's rendition, with its warm, slightly weathered vocals, feels definitive. The lyrics begin, "There'll be no strings to bind your hands, not if love can bind your heart. There's no need to take a stand, for it was I who chose to start." It's a bold claim of autonomy, a woman choosing passion over permanence, asking only for a tender goodbye. Just touch my cheek before you leave me, baby. The song stormed the charts. It reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 22 on the country chart, and held number 1 on the adult contemporary for 3 weeks in April 1981. It earned a Grammy nomination for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, though Lena Horne took the prize. Globally, it topped Canada's charts, hit number 2 in Australia, number 5 in New Zealand, and reached number 43 in the UK, a modest showing for a song that had already charted there twice without breaking through. Its video, a blend of soft-focus romance and country charm, made history as the first country music video on MTV, airing on the network's launch day, August 1st, 1981. The single sold over 1 million copies in the US, earning an RIAA Gold, and went triple platinum in Canada with 300,000 units. By 2016, Angel of the Morning found new fans in Deadpool, where Ryan Reynolds and director Tim Miller used it to score the opening credits, a chaotic, blood-soaked montage paired with Juice's honeyed voice, a perfect mismatch that made the violence seem oddly poignant. The song recharted, hitting number 43 on Billboard's Country Digital Song Sales and number 3 on Spotify's World Music. It also appeared in Promising Young Woman in 2021, Charlie's Angels in 2000, and Charlie Wilson's War in 2007, cementing its cultural staying power. Juice's version works because it's both vulnerable and resolute, her voice carrying the weight of a woman who knows the affair won't last but chooses it anyway. The production, gentle acoustic chords, a hint of steel guitar, cradles her delivery like a well-worn quilt. At 29, after years of grinding through record deals and near misses, Juice Newton made Angel of the Morning her own, a song that still hums in the quiet corners of our collective memory. For our final track today, we return to Derry, Northern Ireland. The Undertones, those scruffy punks from this battle-scarred city, are huddled in the studio, guitars slung low, the air thick with cigarette smoke, and the weight of a world beyond their control. It's January, and they're cutting It's Going to Happen, their 8th single, a track that will storm to number 18 on the UK singles chart by May the 24th, and hit number 10 in Ireland. We last caught up with them on the Wistful Ache of Wednesday week, their 1980 hit that climbed to number 11. Now they're leaning into something fiercer, more urgent, a song that's both a defiant pop-punk anthem and a veiled nod to the hunger strikes gripping their homeland. There's a bitter irony in the title too, because after this, the charts turn their backs on the Undertones, leaving this single as their final top 40 stand. In the damp chill of Derry, with the troubles simmering outside, the band is crafting a sound that's as much a rallying cry as it is a premonition of their own unravelling. This is track 7, playlist 23. Written in the winter of 1980 by lead guitarist Damien O'Neill and bassist Michael Bradley, It's Going to Happen was recorded in January 1981 at Wisseloord Studios in the Netherlands, a step up from their earlier DIY setups. Released on April the 21st, 1981 through EMI, after the band ditched Sire Records over lackluster promotion, it's a track from their third LP, Positive Touch, which itself hit number 17 on the album's chart. Unlike their earlier hits like Teenage Kicks or Jimmy Jimmy, which leaned hard into teenage angst and puppy love fervour, this single takes a darker, more pointed turn. It's partly inspired by the 1981 Irish hunger strikes, a grim chapter of the troubles where IRA prisoners, led by Bobby Sands, starved themselves to protest their treatment by the British government. The song's chorus goes, "Happens all the time, it's gonna happen till you change your mind." That's a jab, a challenge to the powers that be, cloaked in the band's signature pop-punk sheen. What makes this track stand out is its catchy swagger. The Undertones, always a guitar-driven outfit, threw in brass instruments here, giving it a punchy, almost ska-like bounce. You've got Fergal Sharkey's unmistakable yelp, those jagged riffs from Damien and John O'Neill, Michael Bradley's pulsing bass, and Billy Doherty's drums driving it all forward. It's got that classic Undertones energy, urgent but with a bit of colour from some brass instruments too. They performed it on Top of the Pops twice, on May the 7th and May the 21st, 1981, their first airing just days after Bobby Sands' death. Damien O'Neill, wearing a black armband in tribute, made the band's stance clear, though some accounts suggest not everyone in the group followed suit. There's a YouTube clip floating around where Damien himself confirms the song's hunger strike roots, and you can feel the weight of the moment in his performances. But here's where the metaphor kicks in. It's going to happen while about the hunger strikes. It's also like the Undertones were staring down their own future. After this single, their chart fortunes dried up. Their next release, Julie Ocean, barely scraped the charts, and by 1983, Fergal Sharkey was out the door, citing musical differences. The band's shift towards soul and Motown on their final album, The Sin of Pride, was bold but didn't land commercially. Positive Touch itself was a critical darling. NME called it one of 1981's best albums, but it didn't have the raw punk bite of their earlier work, and fans started drifting. You listen to It's Going to Happen now, and it's a snapshot of a band at a crossroads. The brass, the political edge, the slicker production. It's the Undertones trying to grow without losing their soul. Verse 1 has this cryptic line, "The best story I've ever heard. The truth about fat Mr. X and the young girl." Nobody's quite sure who Mr. X is. Maybe a stand-in for authority. Maybe just a quirky lyric. But it adds to the song's defiant vibe. It's sly, while slipping in something heavy. This single, peaking at number 18, was their last hurrah in the top 40. And you can't help but hear the title as a bittersweet nod to what came next. A slow fade from the spotlight, but also Fergal Sharkey's moment as a solo artist in the mid to late 80s. The Undertones were never about chasing fame though. They were about the music, the moment, the fight. And in 1981, with It's Going to Happen, they were still swinging, still believing change was possible, even if the charts and the world didn't always agree. We say goodbye to them now. So, that's half of playlist 23 done and dusted, but do stay tuned for more 80s extravagance, as in the next episode we introduce the Sheffield-based synth powerhouse, the Human League, get a little more Shakin' Stevens, and end the episode with one of the pivotal film moments of the 80s, courtesy of an artist we met in the very first episode of the pod, Vangelis. As usual, if you can leave us a review on the pod platform of your choosing, please, it all helps. But until next time, have a lovely week. Take care.